Hello, I'm Alex from Ani Best Recaps, and I'd love to tell you a story. It all began when the goddess gave her light to a world that was just a black whirlpool of nothingness, forming continents and creating the 9 races. The Dragonians, the Elves, the Oni, the Dwarves, the Demons, the Dark Elves, the Centaurs, the Beast Folk, and finally, humans. And it's in a peaceful village that a young boy, full of dreams, says goodbye to his family to embark on a journey far from home. His greatest desire? To become a great adventurer and give the ones he loves a better life. But reality, my friends, hit him hard. Arriving in the big city, the boy had his first shock. Everyone there lived in a rush, with no patience at all, a completely different atmosphere than what he knew. And things got even more tense at his presentation at the local Adventurers Guild. He identified himself as Light to register, and the clerk, of course, asked what his gift was. That's when he revealed Unlimited Gacha. By pressing the Gacha button, a card would come out, and Light would summon the item described on it. On his first try, he summoned a fork. The problem? The object came out all bent, completely unusable. Trying to hide his embarrassment, the boy insisted twice more, summoning an apple and then a piece of bread. But the fruit came out rotten and the bread was moldy. The poor kid tried to argue that his gift was usually better than that, but the receptionist, rather skeptical, gave him a Class F identification, the lowest in the guild. With no other options, Light accepted the tag and, with a sliver of hope, asked about available jobs. The woman pointed to a board with the easiest tasks, but then came another blow. The region's illiteracy rate was extremely high, and Light, another one of its victims, couldn't read a single word. Once this was confirmed, the clerk pointed out some basic manual labor, like collecting firewood and transporting goods. Even though they were low-paying jobs, our hero rolled up his sleeves and worked his heart out, dedicating his body and soul to do the best he could. His reward came at night, when, exhausted, the young man received his payment, a small pouch with coins of such little value that even after a full day's work, it would barely be enough to buy a decent meal. And to make a complicated situation worse, a group of beast folk decided to pick on the poor boy, knocking him to the ground and stealing his hard-earned money. The worst part? The people around witnessed the scene and acted with total indifference, some even telling him to get out of the way, as if he were nothing more than trash thrown in the street. However, not everything was thorns. To the boy's surprise, from that same group that attacked him, an elf, as beautiful as the day, extended a hand to help him. She even knelt on the ground and gave him a hug, a gesture of affection Light never imagined he would one day receive. An elf dirtying her knees for him. The boy thought he was dreaming, but the woman assured him it was all very real. Her group was called the Concord of Tribes, and each member represented one of the 9 races born from the goddess's light. There was the Beastman Garou, the Elf Sasha, the Dragonian Drago, the Demon Diablo, the Oni Oboro, the Dwarf Nano, the Dark Elf Sion, and the Centaur Santor. But one race was missing to complete the group, and they wanted Light to be the final member, representing humans. Together, they would fight against discrimination and make the world a more equal place. Of course, Light wouldn't miss a chance like that, and he accepted on the spot, joining the team. But, my friends, keeping up with such a powerful group of adventurers was anything but easy. As the days went by, Light faced terrifyingly strong creatures, and being the weakest link in the group, he always needed to be protected by his companions, usually by Sasha, who made it a point to keep the young human safe whenever possible. In fact, because of this overprotective behavior, she became the target of jokes from her friends, who said she was always putting Light under her wing. She swore up and down that she was only trying to prevent him from getting hurt, because if something happened to him, it could tarnish the group's reputation. The truth is, even though he wasn't a fighter, Light made himself useful by carrying the allies' belongings and preparing incredible tea during their breaks from adventure. This, little by little, earned him the trust of his companions. Until, at a certain point inside a dungeon, the leader, Drago, asked everyone to stop walking. According to him, that place was perfect for what they were about to do, as it was practically a dead end. The mood grew heavy, and you could see the tension on the face of every member of the group, except for Light, who, innocent as he was, thought it was just a rest stop and already started setting things up to prepare his usual tea. However, Drago revealed the real reason they were there. The young human was being expelled from the group. Light couldn't believe what he was hearing, unable to understand the reason for such a sudden decision, since everyone seemed to like him and he had always done his job properly.
Even Sasha, who had always shown him such affection, now acted with deep contempt, impatient with the boy's inability to understand what was happening. It was a unanimous opinion. The human was nothing but dead weight, and now they would be free of the disgusting stench of his race. In total disbelief, Light asked why they had included him in the group in the first place. They explained that their superiors thought the boy might be a master because of the gift he possessed. That's why Light had been observed the entire time, like a lab rat, so they could study him more closely. But the conclusion was clear. Light had the normal status of a human, which meant he was not a master, and that made him instantly useless to the Concord of Tribes. At that moment, Sasha even celebrated, since her mission was to continue the elven bloodline. Fortunately, she wouldn't have to marry an inferior race like humans. In any case, adversaries had ordered the boy's death, which is why they brought him to that dead end, where they could take his life without raising suspicion. To carry out the order, the beastman Garou showed his steel claws, which would be used to tear the innocent target apart. With a direct blow to Light's face, blood began to flow. And right then, the boy was certain they were really going to kill him, here and now. The human survival instinct of course made him run desperately for his life. That's when Sasha shot an arrow that violently pierced his leg, cutting his escape short and leaving the boy completely surrendered to death. Not giving up, Light crawled across the ground as Garou approached every second that passed. Crying, the boy screamed that he didn't want to die. But this display of vulnerability only increased the beastman's desire to finish him off. And by a stroke of fate, Light hit the jackpot when he accidentally triggered a teleportation trap that was set on the ground. His enemy even tried to stop him from being teleported, but Light managed to escape successfully, and now he was safe. Or rather, at least for the moment. Because from the looks of it, the place he ended up was in the deepest depths of the dungeon, where incredibly powerful creatures were certainly lurking, ready to appear at any moment. Knowing he was going to die, Light cried and said goodbye to his family in his thoughts, since he wouldn't have the chance to do it in person. Left to his fate, the poor boy was abandoned by his friends. Or rather, by those he thought his friends were. They had always shown him respect and affection, making him happy during the time they adventured together. In the end, all that talk of equality between the races was nothing but nonsense, and his former companions revealed themselves to be the worst kind of people.
Even so, Light didn't throw in the towel. After everything he suffered because of them, he promised to kill them all, one by one, carrying out the revenge that would one day come. In this case, Light would first need to deal with the Hellhound Serpent that had just appeared in the cave, a level 1000 creature against which the human had no chance of winning. Now, despite being infinitely weaker than the monster in every aspect, the boy couldn't simply be devoured without at least trying some form of resistance. With no weapon in hand, all Light had was his much criticized gift, the Unlimited Gacha. From that moment on, all his hopes were placed on this ability, and whatever the goddess willed would happen. So he pressed the button on the item and released a card. And then suddenly, a woman was summoned, and vowing to protect her master, she annihilated the Hellhound Serpent with unbelievable ease, wearing her maid uniform. After resolving the situation, the woman apologized for not preventing the boy's injuries. But in any case, she was able to heal every wound he had suffered, even the one from the arrow in his leg, simply by placing her hand near his body and releasing a soft green energy. Always speaking with a strange formality full of difficult words, the maid asked if her master could reveal his name. Upon learning it, she began to call the boy Lord Light. In turn, she promised to serve the boy under any circumstance, even if she had to sacrifice her own life. Vowing eternal and unconditional loyalty, the mysterious figure introduced herself as Mei Lai, the ever-seeking maid, an extremely rare level 9999 card that had been summoned through Light's ability, the Unlimited Gacha. Then, Mei Lai used her appraisal technique to analyze the young boy's status. What she saw were several layers of blocks and a potential she already knew her master possessed, because her experienced eyes could see far beyond what the simple sight of an ordinary person could reach. According to the maid, the Unlimited Gacha was far from useless. The truth was, no matter what everyone thought, this gift had a trick that few knew. Its power was influenced by the mana flow of the location where the item was activated. The greater and stronger the flow, the greater the gacha strength. In this case, as was obvious, Mei Lai could only be summoned because Light had ended up in the depths of the dungeon to do it, where the energy was powerful. She was even sure that the boy had done this on purpose. Without much pride, the boy admitted that he had landed there by chance, fleeing after being coldly abandoned by those he swore were his friends. And remembering his recent trauma, the boy couldn't hold back his tears and showed himself completely vulnerable in face of such a terrible experience. Showing empathy, Mei Lai gave the boy an almost maternal hug, and even while admitting she didn't fully understand the depth of his suffering, she made it clear she was willing to use all her power to seek the vengeance her master so desperately desired. Now for that to happen, Light only needed to give the order. Light, however, refused such overwhelming help. After all, he wanted to carry out his revenge with his own hands, no matter how impossible it seemed with his current strength. In fact, Light was certain that Mei Lai saw no possibility of that happening. But, on the contrary, she showed total support for that decision and made herself available to assist her master in any way necessary, emphasizing that she wasn't lying when she said she would dedicate her life to standing by young Light's side. And so, in the depths of the abyss, the most difficult dungeon in the region, and now aware of the true power of the Unlimited Gacha, Light pressed the button on the object one more time, but this time with a greater purpose, to build a kingdom that would help him carry out his revenge. And from that moment on, that chamber of darkness began to be engulfed by a true flood of light.
3 years have passed since that fateful day where our protagonist was abandoned as if he were a bag of trash. And if in the past the days of struggle were intense and exhausting, we can see that currently the days of glory are Light's reality. He rules over hundreds of maids inside a palace he created himself, and Mei, as she promised, is always by his side. All the maids seem completely smitten by him, celebrating every time they are noticed, while Mei, with her impeccable posture, tells them all to behave. Leaving the castle, Light walks through the local market, where everyone recognizes him. One of the vendors calls him over for breakfast, while others alert him to a shortage of sweets in the country. Light promises to solve the problem, and Mei assures him she'll handle the logistics as soon as possible. He realizes he'll need to create a new system, as the population of his kingdom has grown exponentially over the last 3 years. He asks Mei where his other legendary summons are, and Mei replies that Aoyuki, the beast tamer, is busy mapping the dungeons and forests. Light thinks about the monsters that roam there, but knows they are no match for a genius tamer like her. Mei continues, saying that Ellie, the mage, is working hard to create a special magic for his grand plan. As for Nazuna, the knight who is excellent in close combat, but let's just say a bit of an airhead in other areas, Mei replies that she's put her on castle patrol, a simple task that would keep her out of trouble. Light doesn't mind. After all, Mizuna's chaotic energy makes things more interesting. However, he does make an appeal, mentioning that with so many incredible waifus being introduced in this episode, it would be disrespectful to Alex if you, who are watching this recap, didn't leave a like and some hype to support the channel. Something that Mei herself agrees with, saying that whoever leaves a like and hype, subscribes, and hits the notification bell has a special place in her heart. At that, the scene shifts, and they return to the castle, where they are called by Jack, the last of his 4 legendary summons, who invites him to train. Mei, a little irritated, tells Jack to address Light with proper respect, but Jack, with his laid-back demeanor, completely ignores her. Light tells Mei it's fine, as he considers Jack an older brother. On the training grounds, the two get ready. With a burst of speed, Light rushes forward and lands a punch straight into his opponent's chiseled abs, pushing him back with surprising strength. Jack, satisfied, praises Light's power, saying that a normal adventurer would have died from that punch. They meet in the center of the arena again, trading powerful blows. Meanwhile, in another part of the castle, Nazuna patrols the corridors with her head empty when she's approached by other maids. They flatter her, saying they feel safe with her around. Nazuna is ecstatic, falling right into their trap. The maids then suggest she should check Light's chambers to ensure everything is secure. Nazuna thinks it's a brilliant idea and runs to the room. As she tries to open the door, she comes face to face with Mei. Nazuna asks what Mei was doing there since Light was training. Mei, blushing violently, stammers that she was cleaning the room. Nazuna insists she needs to check the place, and before May can stop her, enters and notices the messy bed. With her innocence, she comments that it looks like someone was rolling around and sniffing the pillows, and asks if May did that on purpose. May, taking advantage of the vampire's denseness, confidently claims that it's her special bed-making style. Nazuna is impressed and asks to learn, but May refuses, saying it's a trade secret. Nazuna then remembers the maids asked her to deliver a message. She hands a scroll to May, who realizes it's a letter of protest. The other maids are revolting against her for monopolizing the cleaning of Light's room. May tells Nazuna not to worry and gives her some change to keep her mouth shut. Happy, Nazuna runs to the market and after much deliberation decides to buy fluffy pancakes with fresh milk. Back at the castle, she finds Aoyuki on a balcony, already with the map May had requested. Tired of Nazuna's energy, Aoyuki just hands over the report. After that, Nazuna returns to her patrol and enters the throne room. Seeing that no one is around, she lets out a liberating scream, jumps on the throne, and starts playing with it until she accidentally breaks the wing of an angel statue. Scared of May, she puts the piece back haphazardly and flees.
Back at the training, Light and Jack continue to fight. In the end, they go to the bath, and inside the giant tub, Jack praises Light, saying he's become so strong that most dungeon creatures would be child's play for him. He warns, however, that there are still powerful enemies who would destroy him at the first chance. Light gets serious, thinking about the betrayal he suffered 3 years ago, and affirms that he won't rest until he has his revenge. In May's chambers, she summons the 4 troublesome maids and reads the protest letter aloud. In front of her, the 4 fall silent and apologize, saying it was just a way of showing support, as they know May is overworked. May denies their request to clean Light's room and, as punishment, orders them to clean the gigantic hallway to the throne room by hand. Meanwhile, Nazuna is outside, with her face pressed against a shop window, admiring a gauntlet she wants but has no money for. She bumps into Ellie, who asks what she's looking at. Ellie reveals the construction she was supervising is going well, so she decided to take a break. The two start arguing about who is closer to Light. Ellie boasts that she is directly involved in the revenge plan, unlike Nazuna. She even mentions having a lovely evening tea with Light, and that next time she'll arrange a private dinner. Back at the castle, the 4 maids, while cleaning, are busy plotting against May, mentioning that her tyranny is reaching the stratosphere. They think about snitching on her to Light, but give up, fearing her wrath. They conclude that Light cares so much about May because she was his first summon, spending 2 whole months with him alone in the dungeon. Flooded with jealousy, they start rolling on the floor and decide to perform a voodoo ritual to get May out of the equation. And I honestly laughed a lot with them so far. They're a great comic relief for the anime. However, unfortunately for them, May overhears everything and enters the room, cornering them. They immediately apologize, but May, who had returned feeling she had been too harsh, now realizes she hadn't been harsh enough. She orders them to clean the throne room as well. Helpless, they obey. While dusting the throne, the clumsy green-haired one knocks over the piece of the angel wing that Nazuna had broken. The maids panic, thinking it's their fault and imagining what May will do to them. The next morning, Light enters the dungeon and finds Nazuna, Ellie, and Oyuki already waiting. He bids them good morning, while Nazuna and Ellie immediately start bickering. Suddenly, a monster emerges from the shadows, and Light freezes. It's a hellhound, just like the one he saw on that fateful day when he was left to be eliminated. He knows he's much stronger now, but the trauma from that day still haunts him. His blood runs cold just seeing the creature. His party, however, feels no fear. On the contrary, they become enraged seeing that the monster has upset Light. Nazuna gets ready to chop it into little pieces. Ellie asks for permission to eradicate the entire species of hellhounds from the world. And Oyuki wonders if she could find hell itself just to throw the monster into its deepest pits. Their mere aura sends the monster whimpering backward, realizing how outmatched it is. Light, however, calms his group. He takes a deep breath, regains his composure, and slowly approaches the monster. Giving it a pat on the head, he knows that even if he gave the order as a joke, his legendary summons would actually wipe out the entire race. He then turns to them with a new glint in his eyes and declares that they need to head to the surface. Today, their plan for revenge begins.
While Light is getting ready, we get to see what's happening in another part of the world. And, my friends, it's Garou's turn, that Beastman traitor. He's walking through his town, and since he's the local hero, everyone is sucking up to him. To give you an idea of the level, some random guy even offers him his own sister, but Garou isn't interested. And then, just to prove he's a complete asshole, he sees a poor human child digging through the trash for food. The kid wasn't even near him, but Garou makes a point to go out of his way just to go over there, knock the child to the ground, and spit in his face, for pure pleasure. This guy has already guaranteed his spot in hell, right? Right after, he and his lackeys go to a private room to start the ass kissing. And let me tell you, the guys lick his boots without mercy. They comment on how incredible it is that he came from a slum and is now the favorite to be the next chief. Then they ask him how he got so far. Garou, acting like he's the big shot, brags that he just uses his instincts to pick the best jobs. And then he mentions that one job from 3 years ago where he got paid big bucks to pretend to be part of a race unification group, and all he had to do was finish off a human suspected of being a master. He admits he never confirmed if Light died, but he was so weak that it was impossible for him to survive down there alone. For him, it was better to just forget that brat. But that's when fate comes knocking, my friends, because as the scene develops, we see Mei simply walk into the room asking for Light. Garou's lackeys immediately shout, saying she can't talk to the chief like that. But he, curious, tells them to relax as he wants to know what she wants from him. Mei, with that impeccable poker face, introduces herself as the maid of Lord Light and makes up a story on the spot, saying that Light is of noble blood and she's been scouring the continent looking for him. Garou obviously gets a bit suspicious. After all, the people who hired him did a thorough background check on Light, and he never mentioned being noble. But on the other hand, Mei totally looks like she belongs to a rich family, and Garou already sees dollar signs. He sees this as a good opportunity to make some cash. He asks what she wants, and Mei says she discovered that Light supposedly died in the dungeon 3 years ago. Because of that, she wanted him to take her to the last place he was seen so she could pay her respects. And to sweeten the deal, she offers payment in solid gold. But Garou's instincts start going off, warning him that this is a trap. After all, it's very suspicious that she's paying so much just to be led into the dungeon. But then he looks at Mei, a common human, apparently weak, and he ignores the warning, thinking, there's no way a simple human can beat me, he thinks, and I'm just here rooting for this bastard to get wiped all over the floor, but let's continue. He agrees to take her, but then he starts putting on an act, saying he's not doing it for the money, but because Light was a great friend and he wants to help in any way he can. Mei knows it's total bullshit, but she has to stay in character, so she thanks him. And so, after a month's journey, the group is arriving at the spot where Light was betrayed. Of course, Garou had no intention of honoring the agreement. His plan was simple. As soon as they got there, he would attack Mei and let her die, the same way Light did. As soon as they reach the exact spot, Mei falls to her knees, faking total despair about how hopeless Light must have felt there. Meanwhile, Garou starts spinning another tale, saying that Light was attacked by a monster and fell into the teleportation trap before anyone could save him. But while he's talking, his lackeys are already starting to block the exit. They're ready to pounce on her. That's when Mei drops the bomb. Oh, if only I had been with Lord Light from the beginning, he wouldn't have been tricked and betrayed by such despicable trash like them. And, my friends, the moment he hears that, a chill runs down Garou's spine and he backs off. After all, no one, besides the Concordia members and the higher-ups, knew what really happened there. He demands to know how she found out and accuses her of being a spy, to which Mei obviously denies, saying she's a maid dedicated to Lord Light and suggesting anything else is a crime punishable by death. Garou feels a terrifying pressure coming from her, and even though she's just a human, his instincts are screaming at him to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. And right when Mei was about to lose her patience and wipe this bastard off the face of the earth, our boy Light shows up and says, "Mei, stop. This one is my prey." And I'm already in a state of euphoria seeing this moment. A euphoria that's only second to the one you guys give me when you leave your like and your hype on the video, because that gives me incredible motivation to keep producing the best recaps for you. So if you want to be part of the Any Best Recaps family, subscribe and hit that bell. That way you won't miss a thing.
Garou and his men are in shock. None of them heard Light arrive. Garou can't believe what he's seeing. He never even considered the possibility that Light could have survived. Light, all chill, says he's back for revenge. But Garou starts laughing. He thinks it's hilarious that a level 15 human like Light thinks he can get revenge on someone like him who's level 150, even mentioning that he thinks if he kills Light right there, he'll be promoted to chief on the spot. Our protagonist then sighs and asks if Garou isn't even going to ask how he survived before resorting to violence. But the imbecile just assumes Light got lucky and was saved by Mei after he was teleported, which, ironically, is exactly what happened. He then orders his men to attack, and two of them charge forward at once, but before they can even get close, Mei appears in the blink of an eye and their heads go rolling. The other lackeys can't even track her movement and start to panic, while Garou, shaking, shouts at them to calm down, saying, "It was just a lucky shot." Light thanks Mei for protecting him, but says he's got this from now on, asking her to just guard the exit and make sure no one leaves, and I'm already got my popcorn ready because I'm so excited. Garou continues with that despicable speech about how they don't need to worry because they'd never lose to inferior humans, and Light is already sick of hearing Garou talk about being superior when in reality, he's the one who is weak there. Garou, of course, doesn't believe Light, mentioning that everyone knows humans are weak, which makes our protagonist ask, if you're all so strong, why are two of your men's heads rolling on the floor? Garou dodges the question, saying it was carelessness, accusing him of using a magic artifact and all that, and then he and his lackeys charge at Light. Our protagonist then calmly closes his eyes and simply humiliates the entire group without even breaking a sweat, striking them with some kind of magic. Garou and his lackeys fall to the ground wide-eyed because he just got the biggest beatdown of his life and didn't even see it coming. Garou stands over him and asks, "Is this the best your superior race can do?" And this statement made his enemy lose it. After all, he would never allow himself to be humiliated, so he decides to go all out, crushing a necklace on the ground and summoning a level 500 Fenrir to finish Light off. He shouts proud that this is the end of the line, but our hero just yawns, saying that level 500 is still too weak to be a challenge. The opponent thinks the kid has gone insane with fear and tells him to beg for a quick death. Light sees that he still hasn't grasped the power difference, and because of that, he decides to drop his staff and says he won't move an inch, that Garou can hit him with his best attack. The opponent, thinking it's a bluff, charges up the Fenrir's maximum attack and unleashes a blast with enough energy to vaporize a fortress. But when the dust settles, Light is still there, intact, unmoved, and tougher than any fortress, mentioning that it's kind of embarrassing for him to brag about an attack that barely tickled, and it's weird to call that a Fenrir when it barely classifies as a Fenrir puppy. And then, my friends, Light decides to show him how it's done, pulling out a card and saying he'll show him what a real Fenrir looks like, and summons a divine beast, an ancestral Fenrir, level 9,000. The creature is so absurd that Garou can't even process what he's seeing, while our protagonist just orders it to take care of the other wolf. The level 9,000 Fenrir literally just blows in the direction of the opponent's little wolf, and the thing freezes in a block of ice instantly. Seeing Light casually do that finally makes the reality sink in for Garou, and he realizes just how screwed he is. But Light says the wolf god was just for show, that he could have handled it himself. And to make the power difference absolutely clear, Light opens his status screen for Garou to see. He is level 9,999. And now, my friends, the guy is so scared he's shitting bricks. He's so terrified at this moment because he didn't even know levels could go that high. He then throws his weapons on the ground, throws his dignity in the trash, and starts crawling, begging for his life, swearing he was just following orders and that he never would have betrayed him on his own. But Light says he has a few questions. First, he wants to know about the Masters, and the opponent swears he doesn't know what they are. Second, why the higher-ups ordered him to be killed, and he swears he doesn't know that either. He just obeyed. In other words, this guy is completely useless. Light then asks the other beastmen, and they lie to him straight to his face, saying they know, hoping to be spared. But in the next instant, Mei slices them all to bits for daring to lie in front of Lord Light. He then turns back to Garou and says he has one last question and warns him that Mei has the Eye of Judgment, which knows if he's lying.
The question is, since your intuition is so good, do you think I can win a war against the surface nations as I am now? Garou swallows hard but ends up telling the truth, that Light's strength would give him an initial advantage, but he would eventually lose because he's still just one person against nations with armies and countless items. He thinks Light will be mad, but contrary to expectations, he says he already expected as much. But he mentions he has something he wants to show Garou, pulling out a teleport card at that moment and taking both the opponent and Mace straight to his throne room. The opponent is obviously terrified, not knowing what to expect, and when he opens his eyes, he's speechless because he sees his opponent's entire army at his disposal. At that moment, Light walks up to the throne and asks all of his subordinates to display their levels, and he discovers that most of the army is level 5,000 and up, and the weakest ones there are level 1,500. Now that he has seen his true military power, Light asks again,
With an army like this, is it possible to win the war against the surface? And from the look on his enemy's face, well, it looks like we have an answer. He then says that as a reward for confirming that he can win, he will put him through such constant suffering that he will beg for death, while his opponent, shedding his fur from nervousness, just thinks to himself that they created a true monster. Garou, drowning in anguish and suffering, asks if he plans to become a god, to which Light confirms that being a god would be perfect for him, mentioning, however, that the future and the actions of others will determine if he becomes a merciful god or a cruel god, and that his talent will serve to develop wealth and prosperity just as much as it will to sow death and despair.
After settling the score with Garou, our protagonist Light finally decides to head back home. After spending 2.5 years in the Abyss, he's running down the path, hyped, dying to see his parents and siblings after so much time. However, when he gets to the top of the valley and looks at his village, all he finds is ruins. He tries to walk down the path to get a better look, but the scene is so devastating that he just collapses to his knees. During the time he was away, the village was completely destroyed by unknown forces. Light spends a long 6 months there, digging through the rubble and giving the dead a proper burial. And let me tell you, as destroyed as he is on the inside, he feels a tiny bit of relief because he never found his siblings' bodies in that chaos. He holds on to that slim hope that they might still be alive. In fact, he's asking you, watching right now, to smash that like and hype button to increase his luck so he can find his family. And he mentioned how important it is to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any updates. After finishing mourning his parents, that's when we meet his new legendary summon companions, Gold and Nimemu. Gold is the pragmatic type, and he cuts right to the chase. Master, we need to get back to action. We've been away from the kingdom for way too long. Nimemu, on the other hand, is the complete opposite, being totally in love with Light. She immediately scolds Gold for being so clueless, saying the master is grieving and needs to take it slow. Gold snaps back, saying he's just trying to get back to the comfort of his bed, and accuses Nimemu of hypocrisy because he knows she wants to go back too. But Nimemu is loyal to the extreme. Unlike you, I'll stay with Master Light even if I have to sleep on the peak of the coldest mountain. Gold says she got it all wrong, that he'd do the same, but he doesn't want the master sleeping in the cold because it'll ruin his health. And with that, Nimemu finally agrees with him. Light, hearing that whole argument, cuts them both off and tells them not to worry about where they'll sleep because the focus now is something else, gathering information. He knows his army could simply steamroll the entire world, but it would be stupid to go to war without a strategy. He theorizes that his village was invaded because the Federation suspected he was a master. He then gives the order, find out everything about the other nations, and what the hell is so important about a master that makes destroying an entire village worth it. And he swears, if he finds out the reason for all this destruction was selfish in any way, he will burn the earth. With that said, he puts on the Fool's Mask to disguise his appearance, and from now on, he'll use the code name Dark. They fly towards the city of Dagas. Along the way, Gold reminds Nimemu to call him Dark while they're on the surface, so they don't blow their plans. While they're walking through the forest, they stumble upon a carriage being robbed by dwarf bandits. The man begs them not to hurt his son. The bandits see Dark's group and tell them to hand over everything. Light doesn't even blink. He gives the order to Gold and Nimemu to restrain the dwarves, and they handle the job in seconds,
without breaking a sweat. The man, super grateful, offers them a ride since they saved his life. He assumes they're adventurers heading to Daugus to explore the dungeon. The protagonist explains that they aren't yet, but they're heading there precisely to register at the guild. He gets excited, says Daugus is the right place, as it's the border between the human kingdom and the elven kingdom, and is therefore a paradise for dungeons. Arriving at the gate, Dark asks to be dropped off there, and the man, who introduces himself as Colonel, still feels like he hasn't thanked them enough, but Light cuts him off, saying the info on the guild was a big help. Colonel then makes one last offer. If you need a place to stay, look me up at my hotel. Lodging is on the house. Light enters the city with Gold and Nemamu, who are amazed since it's their first time on the surface. They head straight to the guild, and the receptionist, of course, classifies Dark as rank F. Nemamu freaks out. What do you mean rank F? Master Dark is rank S at minimum. The poor receptionist explains that everyone, no matter their class or skill, has to start at rank F. Dark, with all the patience in the world, apologizes for Nemamu's attitude and accepts the registration. Outside, Nemamu is devastated, feeling like trash for making her master apologize. Our protagonist consoles her, but Gold doesn't miss the chance to tease her for causing trouble.
They then decide to take Colonel up on his offer and head to his hotel. At the reception, Dark says he's there to accept the offer, but that he has some special requests. I want to rent the entire floor of the hotel for 1 month, with complete privacy. With that, he tosses a bag of coins to Colonel, who gets embarrassed and says he can't accept it, since they saved him. However, our hero insists, saying the payment is part of the special request. And well, Colonel realizes Dark won't accept for free, and agrees. Upstairs in the room, Light uses several silent magic spells to jam and detect any magical espionage on the entire floor. He then takes off his mask and says they can relax now, but Nemamu is still worried and questions the plan. Master Light, why are you risking yourself as an adventurer? You could have stayed safe in your kingdom and just given us the orders. And now, my friends, Light snaps. He cuts her off instantly, and his mana starts leaking out, full of anger and pressure. Are you trying to interfere with my revenge? Nemamu freezes on the spot, falls to her knees, and begs for forgiveness, asking him to forget she said anything. Gold starts laughing, which breaks the tension. Light calms down. Gold explains to her, there are some things that need to be settled personally. That's why the master has to do this with his own hands. Light apologizes for scaring her, but Nemamu is so shaken that she insists on re-swearing her oath of loyalty right there. Light, reluctantly, agrees. And the gesture of this oath involves kissing his foot, which Light mentions is cultural in their universe to show loyalty. But I gotta ask, did she really do it for that, or to satisfy her own personal desires? Something Gold was thinking too, by the way. Anyway, the next day, they go to the dungeon, and of course, there's a giant line. Light notices there isn't a single elf in the line, and assumes it's because of some beef between the dwarves and the elves. And since he can't have a story without the asshole of the day, 3 guys just cut the line right in front of some rookies. Nemamu is already pissed. Light analyzes the group. A servant, a mediocre fighter, and a hooded guy who looks to be the strongest. Dark, who doesn't take crap from anyone, goes up and calls out the hooded guy, mentioning that it's wrong to cut the line. And let me tell you, this hooded guy, who we later find out is named Kaito, already showed up with a I want to be humiliated vibe. He gets pissed that Dark had the audacity to talk to him, saying he has no right to speak to him because he doesn't know who he is. Dark claps back immediately. You're right, I don't. You're wearing a hood. But if you're so famous, that's even more reason why you shouldn't be cutting in line. Kaito gets so mad he tries to draw his sword, but his friend Yannick stops him, mentioning he'll ruin their plan if he causes a scene. Kaito, fuming, backs off to the end of the line but swears Dark will pay for this. The rookies who were in front thank Dark for defending them, saying they were afraid to start a fight with another race. They start chatting, and the rookies find it weird that Dark's group doesn't have any backpacks or camping gear. Our protagonist thanks them for the tip, realizing they're so used to their item box that they didn't even think about it. Finally, Dark's team enters, and he comments it's his first time in a dungeon other than the Abyss, mentioning he's curious how they work. But he's not there to play around, so he decides to use his magic, Flight, Conceal, and Clairvoyance to find the shortest route to the next floor,
In other words, they are basically speedrunning the dungeon. Gold even complains, "Oh, Master, this way the exploration is boring. We're not seeing anything." Meanwhile, the scene cuts, and we see Kaito and his team, while Mr. Hothead is still fuming about Dark and taking his anger out on the monsters. We find out he's an elven white knight, and Yannick is trying to calm him down, reminding him they're there for a troll on the 3rd floor. And to make things worse, we find out that Kaito hates Yannick and plans to ditch him as soon as he gets what he wants. In other words, another traitor in the making. But honestly, from the way Yannick is acting, I'm thinking he has similar intentions. Later, Light and his team are already on the 3rd floor and defeat some trolls. As they're flying back, Light spots the team of rookies he helped in line, and they're surrounded by goblins. Light, from a distance, snipes a bush snake that was about to attack the rookies from behind and warns them to never let their guard down. The rookies thank him, but then Nemamu senses another presence. Suddenly, a pack of giant bush wolves runs right past them, but they're running from something. The rookies don't get it. And right behind the wolves, emerging from the forest, a giant mutant mantis appears. And it does not look friendly.
The rookies, witnessing that son of Satan before their very eyes, are simply desperate and have no idea what to do, because that thing was supposed to have been killed over 10 years ago. At this, the leader asks Mia to attack with some magic, because if she can do something to throw it off balance, they can use that opening to escape. Hearing the retreat plan, Dark turns and asks if they'd mind if they hunt that creature for them. The rookies, hearing this, think he's lost his mind because a beast like that has got to be at least level 500. However, Dark just tells them to grab some popcorn and relax because he and his friends, combined with the forces of the like and hype from everyone watching, will take care of it. Gold takes the lead and charges in, but to a surprise, the mantis manages to block his strikes, and he admits the creature's claws are tougher than they looked. Seeing this, Dark decides to join the party and launches a fire arrow, but the monster is fast and parries the arrow right back at our protagonist. The rookies, seeing things are getting tough, start to fear for Dark's luck. While the leader asks Mia to try something, she snaps at him asking if he's even seeing what's happening because she doesn't stand a chance of doing anything against the power they're all showing. Especially since Dark just used magic without an incantation, and she's questioning if her companions have lost their minds for not being amazed by this. Gold, seeing the rookies are more in the way than helping, tells them to sit down and watch because he's going to give them a little lesson on how to be a knight. And well, I can only say it was one hell of a lesson. He starts by explaining the concept of attacking with a sword and defending with a shield, but that things aren't always what they seem. At that moment, the mantis attacks him and he blocks with the shield. However, the block was so intense that it completely shattered the enemy's claw. While the mantis reels back in pain, Gold rushes in and cuts off one of its legs. Dark then launches more fire arrows, and the monster tries to parry them again, but this time the arrows just change trajectory in midair and slam right into its back. And finally, limbless and full of holes, the enemy realizes it has no chance and tries to flee back to the forest. Dark is even surprised it's smart enough to retreat, but he's not letting it escape. He then summons a gigantic firewall blocking its escape, while poor Mia is about to have a meltdown realizing he just used large-scale tactical magic instantly like it was a walk in the park. With no escape by land, the mantis opens its wings and tries to flee into the air. But before it can get high, Nanumu makes an absurd leap and in midair slices the beast to bits. But when she lands, Gold is right there to scold her. She doesn't get it. She did what the master wanted, right? Wrong. He points out that she destroyed the beast, and along with it, she also destroyed all of the valuable parts. In other words, they can't sell anything from the hunt. Nanumu realizes the huge mistake she made and immediately drops to the ground, begging her boss for forgiveness. He, all chill, says it's no big deal. Meanwhile, the rookies are just standing in the corner trying to process if they really just saw humans do all that, or if it was a mass hallucination. Rummaging through the monster's goo, they find the magic gem, which by sheer luck was still intact. As they're about to leave, Mia, still in shock, asks if Dark is from some famous party. He just replies, "Nope, we're all rank F." And obviously, the rookies are left even more confused. Mia, super grateful, uses the rest of her mana to create a water ball for Dark to clean himself off. Since it's getting late, the rookies' leader invites them to camp with them for the night. And while they're around the campfire, Dark mentions she seems to be an incredible mage. But she says no, she can't cast magic without an incantation like him, nor can she use tactical magic. When her brother and leader asks if that's really so impressive, the girl nearly freaks out and explains there are 3 classes of magic. She gives examples. Combat magic is like the fire arrow or an ice sword, meant for a single target.
Tactical magic like the firewall affects a much wider area. Strategic magic, on the other hand, is so powerful it has a global impact, causing tsunamis or cataclysms, and it requires a whole group of mages pulling their mana and chanting. She continues, saying that for dragonoids, elves, dark elves, and demons, casting advanced magic is easier. But for humans, it's an incredibly difficult task. And with all that said, Dark just casts magic without an incantation. So yes, from a magical perspective, it's completely insane. However, Mia's brother, full of pride, says she's good enough to get a recommendation to the Duchy's Magic Academy, and that he's sure she'll be able to cast tactical magic someday. Dark then asks if the Duchy is that nation created by all the races together, the Principality of Nine. The kid says yes, but then something bad happened, and her brother tells us they lost their parents to a plague, and because of that, she could never go. He tells us they formed this party with Gimra and Wordy, their childhood friends, just to survive. And let me tell you, that hit Light right in the feels, reminding him of his own sister. Pressured to tell his story, Dark makes up a drama saying his parents died in a fire and he was left with severe burns, which is why he's searching for a magic potion. While this sad vibe is going on, the scene cuts to that asshole Kito. He and Yannick are in the dungeon hunting orcs. Yannick wants samples for his research, how to break the level caps imposed on each race, and for that he needs a human guinea pig, and Kito knows exactly who he wants to hunt. Sometime later, Dark is back at the guild, and he's become a celebrity. His group even has a name now, the Black Motley. He's drawing so much attention that two human adventurers, Sutherland and Gilbert, come over to congratulate him for reaching the 5th floor. Light is happy after all. This was the plan, get famous. At the dungeon entrance, he runs into Mia and her group. She's all shy and hands him a small pot of ointment she made herself, remembering his story about the burns. And our protagonist obviously feels like trash for lying. To make up for the gesture, he decides to return the favor. He pulls out an item and gives it to her, a beautiful bracelet. Mia doesn't want to accept it, it looks expensive, but Light insists.
And my friends, what a gift! As soon as they walk away, Namomo questions the master about giving her the SSR wishing bracelet, which is capable of performing small miracles if the wish is strong enough. And I gotta confess, if I owned that item, I'd wish for everyone watching this recap to subscribe and hit that bell to help the channel grow. That's my true dream, and since I know you all are infinitely more valuable than that item, you can certainly help make Alex's dream a reality. The scene changes, and soon after, we see Dark arrive on the 5th floor, which is completely covered in snow. He gives Golden and Momo a mission to hunt the Yetis they need, and then activates a teleport item, sending him right to his throne room in the abyss. Back is Light, he sips some tea and asks his generals how the revenge plan is coming along. While Ellie says everything is almost ready, he's happy to hear it, telling her she can use any resources she needs. He then turns to Mei and mentions she's also doing a great job managing things there, asking her to keep it up. To Aoyuki, he says to continue exploring the ancient forest, and Nazuna, well, as she asks what she should do, he reflects that she's useless when it comes to well-laid plans. All he can do is ask her to keep everyone safe while he's gone. After all, you never know when a super powerful villain might show up, and she's of course overjoyed with her master's trust. Light can hardly wait. He wants to savor the look of despair on Sasha's face when he finally confronts her. The scene then changes, and now we go to Sutherland and Gilbert, the guys who congratulated Light, and they're camped out. Sutherland needs to step away to answer a call of nature, and when he returns, he's met with the sight of Gilbert's head rolling on the ground, while that bastard Kaito stands over the body. We also see the other two party members were killed in their sleep. And what's his motive? Simple, his hatred for the human race. Sutherland, desperate but smart, throws a smoke bomb and bolts, running to try and warn the guild. As he thinks he's safe, he's suddenly hit in the back by something. We see Kaito is on a magical hoverboard, and before he can react, he's knocked out by Yannick. And Yannick is even complaining at Kaito for killing the others. I told you I needed them alive. He needs as many test subjects as possible because his research is unstable, and Sutherland will almost certainly die from the side effects before he can perfect the technique. He mentions they need more human guinea pigs.
And we start right on the next day, with Nemumu causing a scene at the guild. She dumps a pile of magic stones on the counter and demands that Lord Dark's rank be increased immediately. The poor receptionist, trembling for her life, tries to explain that it's impossible, especially since the guild already approved a double promotion for him, from rank F straight to D,
But Namumu, being the massive simp that she is, insists that her master doesn't need to follow local laws and that not even rank S is enough for him. Not knowing what to do, the employee suggests that Dark perform another great feat. With that, our protagonist and his friends head back to the inn with a mission poster, hunting down adventurer killers who are targeting humans. He and Gold are sure this will get them promoted, but Namumu, ever the skeptic, points out they have no clue who the criminals are. Gold even suggests using the master's cards, but Light explains they appear randomly. Namumu suggests asking the Abyss for help, but the conversation is interrupted when they sense an intruder arriving. At that moment, a portal opens in the middle of the room, and to my absolute horror, who comes out of it is Mia, clearly injured and unconscious, with her bracelet shattering right after. In other words, something terrible must have happened, and her wish was to get to Dark. We're about to find out. Dark acts fast, puts her on the bed, heals her wounds, and then uses a hypnosis spell to enter the girl's mind and see what the hell happened. And here, my friends, we see the terror. One day, while she and her group, her brother Elio, Jimra, and Wordy, were camped out, another group warned them about the human hunters and got out of there. Elio, as the leader, decides they have to leave too, but the group is already tired from their previous adventure and can't walk fast. The sun sets, and the worst happens. Those bastards, Kaido and Yanak, find them. Mia innocently even tries to warn them about the hunters. The elves just laugh, lamenting that the rumor spread and scared off the humans, and that's exactly why they can't pass up the opportunity to take care of these brats. When Kaido draws his sword, the three boys yell for her to run, while they try to buy time. Elio then charges and is easily knocked down with a vertical blow to the stomach. Jimra and Wordy attack right after, and sadly, meet the same fate. Mia falls into total despair. Wordy, barely holding on, musters his last strength to yell for her to run, while Jimra, in a final act of courage, also gets up and the two charge the elf again. Kaido, sick of his persistence, delivers a blow twice as strong and finishes them. Yanak complains, "You killed the humans again. We can't use them for the research." Kaido, being the asshole that he is, says he'll crush anyone who opposes him, and that the girl is still left. Yanak points out that mages are rare, but that the three boys would have been useful. And here's where it gets disgusting. Kaido decides he's going to use Mia before handing her over for the experiments. Well, Yanak, who doesn't share that desire, simply shrugs and steps aside. Kaido approaches Mia, who's paralyzed in fear, and asks why she's scared since she's about to have the privilege of being used by a future legendary hero. But in the middle of this, Elio tries to get up again. He screams for Mia to run, and this time, Mia obeys. Kaido turns to chase her, but Elio throws himself in front of him. Yanak yells not to kill the boy, and Kaido snarls that it's harder than it looks. And that's when Elio, the hero of this episode, drops this gem. Fighting is about using your head to surprise your enemies. Remembering Gold's lesson, he repeats, block with the sword, strike with the shield, but always use your head. Drawing strength from the bottom of his soul, he fakes a sword attack and uses his shield to slam Kaido and knock him to the ground. And I was just totally hyped by that move. I hope that you watching will honor the persistence of a desperate brother facing such vile enemies, and leave your like and hype to help him in this battle, even if it's just to give him a safe passage to the next world. Right now, Kaido is on the ground in disbelief, and the hatred he feels for that kid reaches its peak. He activates an ability of his sword, the Grandius, which pierces Elio's chest, leaving him impaled in the middle of the field. Yanak stops him from attacking again and tells him to go after the girl, because if she reaches the guild, they're done for. Kaido reaches Mia in the blink of an eye, using the Grandius's ability like an energy hoverboard. He mocks her, saying his legendary sword can reach any insect. But Mia, showing absurd courage, says she won't waste her friend's sacrifice. She attacks with ice spears, which are easily destroyed, and when she tries to run, she's taken down and her leg is injured. Kaido orders her to surrender, but Mia spits in his face. She says he will never be a hero, that heroes are strong and kind like Lord Dark, and that Kaido is nothing but a cowardly bully. Hearing this, Kaido freezes. He remembers being mocked for being superior only to those weaker than him. He remembers being kicked out of the White Knights, probably for hitting his max level and still being useless. Mia throws the final nail in the coffin, telling him he's a failure. Kaido, overflowing with hate, launches several beams in her direction, and as the projectiles fly, Mia uses her last trick. And what a trick, my friends. It was the SSR Wishing Bracelet. She focused all her despair and the item fulfilled its promise. A small miracle was performed, opening the portal. And let me tell you, a miracle is what you all also do when you help Alex's dream grow. If you want Dark to get there in time to save Elio and avenge these cowards, subscribe and hit that bell right now. Your strength is what moves the story. Back in the present, Dark exits Mia's mind and announces, "It's time to go." Meanwhile, in the forest, Yanok is trying to heal Elio, who's practically dead. Kaido reappears, and Yanok the researcher asks about the girl. Kaido confesses that she just disappeared. Yanok freaks out. A white knight fooled by a little girl? He fears the Elven Kingdom will find out Kaido stole the Grandius, a national treasure. Kaido starts to panic, thinking about the level 3000 commander of the White Knights and his level 2000 subordinates coming to hunt him down. Yanok tries to calm him, saying the research can still give him a higher level, but at that moment, Dark appears, stating that he won't allow that to happen. Kaido freezes. He, at his level, didn't even sense Dark's approach. Gold arrives carrying Elio's body, who is still breathing. Dark, after healing the boy, asks why. Why did these kids, who just wanted to achieve a dream in this crappy world, have to suffer so much? He says that maybe in another world they could have been friends, and that's why he will never forgive these two. Yanok, with the most punchable face, tries to lie, saying he was the one who saved the boy. But Dark cuts off the lie. "I'm with the girl you were chasing. But relax, I didn't tell the guild anything." Kaido, thinking it's his lucky day, bursts out laughing. "Great! Now all I have to do is kill you and the problem is solved." Dark asks if this hero talk is a joke. "The only reason I didn't tell the guild was so that you could become my prey. I'm going to make you suffer so much you'll beg you never were born." With that said, he tells Gold and Namumu to stay out of it, and walks towards the elves. Kaido, consumed by rage, attacks with everything, but Dark blocks the sequence of blows easily and counters, slamming his staff into Kaido's stomach. And I gotta say, I'm just feeling pure satisfaction as he asks, "Is that all the legendary hero can do?" Even more pissed, Kaido activates the Grandius and launches several clones of the sword. Yanok, watching, can't believe it. He's witnessing a human fighting on equal footing with a Phantom-class weapon? Kaido starts throwing a tantrum, saying Dark is cheating, that he's a fighter, not a mage. Namumu and Gold comment, "The master is neither. The closest thing would be an unlimited card mage." Dark then conjures a rain of ice swords without an incantation. Kaido sends his clones, but the ice rain destroys all of them. Yanok's jaw is on the floor at Dark's mana pool. Kaido tries everything, but Dark's defense is flawless. He doesn't even need to move. The ice swords alone are enough. Kaido's completely freaking out, refusing to accept that he's losing to a human. And then he drops the bombshell. "I won't lose. I have the sacred sword Grandius, granted by the heavens to a master from the past." Dark's group is in shock. He asks Kaido what he knows about the masters. Kaido lets out a laugh and answers, "If I know them? I don't just know them. I'm a descendant of them. I carry their blood. I am a submaster."
Light, hearing he's a supposed submaster, changes the plan on the spot. He informs Gold and Nemu that he's not killing them now. Instead, he's taking them to the Abyss to rip every last piece of information out of them. The two understand the mission and get ready to face Yanok, while the Master handles Kaito. But Yanok, the coward scientist, immediately starts whining that it's not fair, that he's not a fighter. However, he had a trick up his sleeve. He points to the two servants with him, and the guys start to transform, revealing they are the disgusting results of Yanok's experiments, human-monster hybrids. And the bastard even brags about it. He says he combined them to surpass their limits, and that he plans to do much more, he just needs more human guinea pigs. Light's group is disgusted, but then comes the gut punch. Light recognizes one of the hybrids. It's Sullivan, the adventurer who congratulated him at the guild. What a rage, my friends. Light regrets not being able to save the guy, but now there's nothing to be done. He gives the order to Gold and Nemu, end their suffering. Nemomo and Gold charge in and attack, but they see the hybrids have some seriously OP regeneration. This makes Yannick let out that disgusting villain laugh, calling them fools for thinking they could beat his creations. Gold and Nemomo, already sick of his crap and wanting to end the poor soul's agony, decide to use their special moves. They coat their weapons in mana and charge in. Yannick starts to mock them again, but then he notices the hybrids aren't getting up. In other words, they're toast. This scientist freaks out, unable to believe his life's work was erased so easily, and while he's frozen, Nemomo comes up from behind and delivers a massive, full-force kick right to his nuts, making the guy nearly turn inside out. Meanwhile, Light is feasting on Quito. He's dominating the fight so absurdly that every time an attack gets close, Quito gets a look of sheer terror. And Light, let me tell you, is finding this hilarious, since the guy was calling himself a legendary hero 5 minutes ago. Quito, pissed about being humiliated, activates the final form of the sacred sword Grandius, enchanting it with multiple magics. Light even finds it impressive, but what a pity, he thinks, that your aim is garbage, as Quito can't hit a thing. The elf starts throwing a tantrum, calling him a coward, and that he's only alive because he can't land a hit. And I thought this was one of the worst villain arguments in my entire life. The citizen was basically saying, I dare you to stand still and take a hit for me. And you know what the most bizarre part of this whole story is? Yes, my friends, Light simply decides it's time for the final humiliation. He stands still and tells him to make it count, that he'll let himself be hit. And if he can manage to even scratch him, he'll be forgiven. After all, he's confident he'll never be scratched if you, who are watching this recap, leave your like and your hype on the video. So please, help our protagonist out and help Alex's video too. At this, Quito thinks Light has gone insane, but he doesn't pass up the chance. He raises his sword and brings it down with all his might. The blow connects, and, well, it does nothing. Damage 0. Quito can't believe it. How did a human tank a direct hit from the Grandius? Light, with a little smirk, says, you can keep trying, and Quito tries. He hits, and hits, and hits again, and every single blow, 0 damage. Light eventually gets tired of being hit, shatters the enchantment of the sword with a flick, punches the imbecile in the stomach, and sends him flying with the right hook to the face. And I feel like even my soul transcended with happiness and fulfillment in this moment. When Quito stops rolling, completely wrecked, Light stands over him. I have a lot of questions for you, so I'm not going to kill you, yet. And Quito, who thought he was a legendary hero, a sub-master and all that, starts begging for his life like a coward. He says he's from the Elven nation, that he was next in line to be captain of the White Knights, giving all this and more information just to be spared. And that, my friends, is when Light gets pissed. He's disgusted by the cowardice. A hero? You? Surrendering so easily? A hero fights to the end. And Light says who the real heroes were. Elio, Jimra, and Wordy. They fought to the end, even knowing they didn't stand a chance. Light apologizes to the boys' bodies for not saving them, but says he'll do everything to make sure Elio survives. He activates his teleport magic. Quito, desperate, asks, "What about me?" To which our protagonist just says, "Oh, you two are coming with me." In the blink of an eye, Quito and Yannick open their eyes in the throne room, deep in the abyss. Yannick freaks out. How did they get from the Dagas dungeon to the abyss? And then Light's generals arrive. Mei, Ellie, Oyuki, and Nazuna. They hear the story. They find out what these bastards did to humans. And their gaze, my friends, it's a look that kills. They immediately start discussing methods of torture. Quito and Yannick, seeing the danger, start blaming each other. It was his idea. No, it was his. Light cuts off the argument with a single question. When you were killing those weaker humans who were certainly begging for mercy, did you show any empathy for the weak? And obviously, those two bags of trash went silent. Our protagonist just finishes by saying they'll get the same treatment. In other words, guys, justice will be served. The scene then changes. Sometime later, Mia wakes up at the inn and Light is there. He tells her he managed to save Elio, but unfortunately, Jimra and Wardy didn't have the same luck. All he could do was bring her a lock of hair from each of her precious friends. And the scene is just heartbreaking, and Light even reflects on whether using his strength only for revenge is the right thing to do. The next day, Light goes to the guild, reports the incident, but lies saying the killers disappeared. And as a reward, he and his party are promoted to rank C. He says goodbye to Mia and Elio, who decide to quit the adventure life and go back home. The girl promises to keep studying magic on her own, to one day meet Light again, and he just replies that he's looking forward to it. The scene then changes. We are stories back in the abyss. May and Ellie bring the interrogation report. Ellie's magic managed to extract the memories, but they are fragmented. But the lore drop is insane. It mentions that the legend says that if a master is not controlled, they could destroy the entire world. Even he finds this hard to believe, but since the guy's mind was a mess, he doesn't want to jump to conclusions. He then asks how the prisoners are doing. As an answer, Ellie opens a portal and the two, Kito and Yanak, are just husks, completely broken. She mentions there is no more information to get from them. And with that said, he doesn't waste time, mentioning that it's time to get rid of them. He then summons a creature called the Dead Man's Banquet, and the beast simply devours both of them in a brutal fashion. With that settled, he asks Ellie, and the other operation. She, all happy, says the preparations are complete and that he can start his revenge on Sasha whenever he wants. She says the plan is to start with the White Knights, since they're all sub-masters, and mentions that their vice captain, Mikhail, is Sasha's fiancé. And then, my friend, the scene cuts. To where? Yes, to the Elven Kingdom. Sasha and Mikhail are having a drink and laughing. And laughing about what? Simple, she's telling him, with all the mockery in the world, about how much they love to see humans suffer. While Mikhail talks about a village he eradicated, and I wonder if it wasn't our protagonist's own village, Sasha laughs and tells the story again about how Light begged for his life, and the two, happy, talk about how good it is to watch humans despair. And I can only think that these bastards need to enjoy the last few minutes of peace they have left, because when they least expect it, things are going to get brutal. So brutal that while these two bastards are laughing, the scene cuts and we see Light preparing to pay her back for all this suffering she caused.
And we are back with Sasha, right after that little date with Mikhail. She is heading home with her maid, all happy and commenting on what a beautiful couple they make. But the joy is short-lived because the carriage stops suddenly. The reason? A human slave dropped some food on the road while being whipped by an elf for absolutely no reason. And the only thing that Trader can think about is how useless humans are. Bored while waiting for the mess to be cleaned up, she looks outside and sees a familiar silhouette in an alley. Terror takes over immediately. She jumps out of the carriage, runs to the spot, but finds no one. She tries to convince herself she is crazy, that our protagonist died years ago. But then she turns around and sees a note on the wall ordering her to go to the giant tower. And the worst part is that it was signed by Light himself. The elf goes into total panic mode. After all, if her ex-lover is alive, she loses everything, including the money, her noble status, and the engagement to Mikhail. The maid arrives shortly after and finds her mistress collapsed on the ground in despair. Meanwhile, from a nearby rooftop, Light and Ellie are watching from the front row. And let me tell you, seeing this woman squirming on the ground is a delicious start to the revenge. But the maid warns that she has much worse things in store for her. The scene cuts to the White Knights camp, and if you thought it was impossible to hate these guys more, prepare your stomach. Two female knights, Nia and Kia, are using a live human slave as a dartboard. And meanwhile, Sharfat has his face buried in a slave girl's chest, forcing the poor thing to pretend she likes it so she does not become the next target. They are in a meeting to discuss Kaito's disappearance. Most reminds them that it is their responsibility to clean up the mess their former comrade made. Sharfat, annoyed by the screams of the dartboard slave, tells the two crazy women to just kill him already, but they complain that they are having fun. Moss joins the conversation with his twisted ideology, saying it is their duty to give humans a quick death to end their pathetic lives. In the middle of this psychopath discussion, Captain Hardy loses his patience and tells everyone to shut up, releasing such an absurd pressure in his voice that even a bird flying by dies of a heart attack.
The leader orders Sharfat to kill the slave being used for target practice. The elf obeys instantly, blowing the man's head off with one finger. The slave girl on his lap is terrified,
but he tells her to relax, claiming he would never do that to her. He dismisses the girl, and as soon as she leaves, the captain warns him to be careful not to dirty the elven bloodline by having children with humans. The subordinate laughs and says there's no need to worry because actually he was already bored of her and planning to shoot her in the back later. And this is what disgusts me, my friends. These guys treat human lives like disposable toys. If your blood is boiling too and you want to see Light destroy these white knights, leave your like and your hype right now to give strength to our protagonist, because justice is coming and it is going to be brutal. That night, Sasha hears a thunderous noise, looks out the window, and sees a giant tower emerging from the forest, which sends a chill down her spine, as it is the location of the meeting. The next morning, the structure is already causing chaos, with monsters blocking trade routes, food running out, and elves desperate for information. Light, Gold, and Numu are in town, disguised as adventurers. A pair of elves see the assassin and, thinking she is hot, try to convince the girl to ditch the group, but Numu, faithful as ever, tells them to get lost. The elves, offended by being rejected by a human, try to get aggressive, but Dark launches a lightning arrow and sends the guy flying, making everyone around recognize them as that group of super strong humans from Dagas. Our hero is satisfied as his fame is spreading. Meanwhile, in the forest, a group of elf adventurers tries to investigate the tower and takes a little human girl to use as live bait, threatening and kicking her when she falls from exhaustion. They are standing there complaining about the livestock being lazy when a drop of saliva lands on one of their hands. Looking up, a rock chimera bites his head off in one go. The monster tears the group of elves apart, and the little girl falls to her knees, thinking she is next. But the chimera sniffs her, realizes she is human, and walks away. The girl breathes a sigh of relief, but then a group of armed men comes out of the forest, and she thinks she is going to be enslaved again, starting to cry. But to her surprise, the men pour a healing potion on her, giving her clothes and food.
It is Light's rescue team. They are saving every human slave they can. The leader contacts Aoyuki, who is at the top of the tower, controlling all the monsters in the area to attack only the elves who hurt humans. Ellie appears to check on the tamer, worried if this is a moral test from the master, but Aoyuki says everything is under control. The rescue team leaves the little girl in a safe village where she is finally free. That night, Sasha is biting her nails. She cannot reach the tower alone because there are level 1000 monsters on the way, and she knows that if the White Knights get there first and find out her ex-fiancé is alive, her charade is over. She needs to kill Light with her own hands before they find out. The next day, the Elven Council meets, wanting to send the White Knights to clear the tower, but Captain Hardy is against it, saying that sending the elite without information is stupid. The Queen agrees with the soldier, who happens to be her son, and decides to increase the reward for information before sending the knights. The Chancellor gets pissed, thinking it is favoritism between mother and son. Later, Hardy goes to thank his mother. The monarch seems worried if this is the sign of a new Dark Lord, because if a lord is born, a hero, meaning a master, is also born, and they need to control or kill that individual. The son remembers the case of a potential master years ago, referring to Light, but the Queen says he was discarded because of being common, to which the captain laments, saying he would have loved to participate in the elimination of that human plague. And now, my friends, the net is closing in. The next morning, the guild is packed with people wanting the tower mission, and Light and his group are there. Sasha passes by and hears her ex's voice. She stops, turns around with her heart racing, and demands that the masked man show his face immediately. The masked man tries to play it cool, saying he uses the accessory to cover burns, but Sasha is not playing around. She ignores the excuse and slaps the mask right off his face.
After taking the slap, our protagonist holds back, because as much as Light wants to end her right there, that would ruin the revenge plan he spent years preparing. So, keeping calm, he pulls his hood back, revealing a face covered in horrible burns. Sasha, of course, doesn't recognize him with those grotesque marks, and she gets so disgusted that she starts screaming at him for soiling her eyes with that sight, even though she was the one who demanded to see it. Typical Sasha. As soon as the traitor leaves, Light reveals the trick. The burns were just illusions created by the mask, and he is relieved it worked. But as soon as he enters the forest, he realizes those 2 elves he humiliated earlier are still on his tail, holding a grudge. Light, who has more important things to do, decides to give them a chance, asking them to back off if you don't want to die. But the elves, thinking the human is bluffing, continue the pursuit. They think they are going to make him pay for the disrespect, mocking him the whole way, but the smile on their faces disappears real quick when they reach the meeting point and Mara appears. And she warns that it is too late to beg, because the moment they insulted the master, their fate was sealed. And without wasting time, she simply devours both of them whole. Light apologizes for making her eat something that tastes so bad, but Mara, demonstrating that loyalty we know so well from Light's allies, says she would devour 1,000 elves for him. Shortly after, the rest of the team arrives to escort the master to the tower, where we see not only our old friend Jack, but 2 new summons, one of them being Ice Heat, another called Suzu, who actually takes the lead to guide the way. And on the trip, Gold comments on how good it is to see Jack again, but is surprised he came all the way there. Jack explains it was Ellie's idea, but that he also didn't want to leave him doing all the hard work alone, and that he wouldn't leave Little Light alone. And my friends, as soon as Jack drops that informal nickname, calling the master Little Light, the girls get pissed at the lack of respect. But Jack keeps it real. They are a bunch of hypocrites. Light never asked for formality, and if they keep putting him on a pedestal, he will end up alone, surrounded by servants instead of friends. And if that is going to happen, Jack says he is ready to throw hands with them to knock some sense into their heads. The tension rises, but Light steps in before it turns into a bar fight, telling everyone to calm down. The tension dies down, but Light is still curious about Suzu. The poor thing suffers from extreme shyness and can only talk to her trusty musket. Which is a shame because her summon card said androgynous, and Light is dying to know if she is a boy or a girl, but he can't exactly check, right? The group finally arrives at the tower, and Light is impressed because Ellie did an incredible job. She opens the entrance and gives a full tour. The tower is reinforced against any magical or physical interference based on the Abyss core. And at the top, she prepared the wedding venue for the grand finale. Light climbs onto the throne Ellie built, and the mage asks for permission to explain the details of the plan. The goal is to execute the revenge right when Sasha is about to marry into the royal family, but Ellie made some adjustments. Since the White Knights are the kingdom's elite, they would definitely try to intervene, so she prepared everything to defeat them beforehand. This way, they test the military strength of the Abyss against the Elven elite, and with the Knights out of the picture, it becomes much easier to bend the Elven nation and get information on the Masters. Plus, Ellie created a shadow clone of Light to continue his adventures while the real one focuses on revenge. Light is impressed by her genius. While they talk, OUQ is already controlling the monsters to guide Sasha straight there. In the forest, Sasha and her guards are hiding in the bushes, terrified of the monsters in the area. Little by little, they are cornered toward the tower, and when they get there, they run into Ellie's new pet, a dragon. Sasha freaks out and flees immediately. She knows she doesn't stand a chance alone, and her only option now is to call the White Knights, even though she's afraid they will discover about Light. And as she runs, we see that from the top of the tower, the group watches her escape, and Ellie is certain she will return with the cavalry, and when she returns, it is going to be a show. That night, Sasha summons the Elven Council. She tells them about the monsters and the dragon. The Queen is shocked, but the Chancellor confirms the story with another report. Now cornered, Captain Hardy has no choice but to lead an expedition. Sasha, being clever, asks to tag along for the nation's safety, but in reality, she just wants to ensure Light dies, something the Chancellor agrees with, saying it will be good for her image before the wedding, but he imposes a condition. She has to take an artifact from her father's collection so she isn't deadweight after all. Without it, she won't be able to keep up with them. The next morning, the expedition sets off, and Mikhail, Sasha's fiancé, defends her presence to the other knights, while both Nia and Kia think it is just favoritism, but admit they need her as a guide. As they advance, Light watches everything from the tower, trembling with excitement at the idea of finally getting his revenge. In the forest, Sasha almost trips, but Mikhail catches her in a romantic moment, asking her to be careful, something that almost causes nausea in the other members of this disgusting group. After walking for some time, they finally reach the tower, and Mikhail congratulates his fiancée, but suddenly, the doors open and an army of rock monsters, terribly poorly animated, come out. And while the gang is almost filling their diapers thinking about how to confront them, Hardy, showing great caution and cunning, mentions that he prepared a surprise to draw the attention of potential enemies, thanks to a group of mercenaries he hired. He says that all they need at this moment is to avoid unnecessary confrontations, as they will need maximum strength for the real threat, which is the dragon. After finishing his speech, we see fireworks going off in the forest, luring the monsters away, and with that, the path is clear. After they begin the assault on the tower, Hardy uses his magic, absolute silence, creating a zone where no sound exists, allowing them to move without being detected. They run into the tower, and Sasha's jaw drops at how disturbing the sensation of being in that absolute void is. While they advance thinking they are fine, that is when life comes to show them that almost nothing goes as expected, and with that, the floor they step on glows, and we discover this is a teleportation trap. And in the blink of an eye, the entire group is separated and each one ends up in a different room of the tower. Ellie's strategy worked perfectly because, in other words, all she wanted was to divide and conquer. And well, the moment the plot really heats up is when the episode ends. And guys, the plan was executed to perfection as the White Knights are separated and trapped in Light's tower. What awaits each of them in those rooms? And Sasha? Will it be in the next episode that our protagonist gets his revenge? If you are biting your nails with anxiety, you already know what to do. Let me know in the comments that you want the next part, subscribe, and hit that bell because the final battle is about to begin.